Hello and welcome to the Street Crime UK YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Today we look at the family of a Brit killed by Spanish police in a hail of bullets, believe he was executed. Barber Sean Hercules, 39, was shot at least 18 times in a hotel on Costa del Sol in what Spanish police described as a gun battle. But at the inquest, there was no evidence produced that married dad of two, Sean, from Leeds, West Yorkshire, was armed or posed a threat when he was gunned down. West Yorkshire Senior Coroner Kevin McLowan criticised police in Eastponia, near Marbella, for a conspicuous lack of cooperation, and in refusing to send any files have not helped 1 inch in the inquest. Mr. Hercules, who had posted selfies of himself with former professional boxer David Hay and Grindmaster Stormzy, was shot dead in Autosol Apart Hotel, Eastponia, on the afternoon on the 10th of September 2018, having walked away from a 100 miles per hour car crash in Puerto Buenos that morning. Spanish police claim they had discovered ammunition in the vehicle, but that has never been established. His mum, Martha Friel, 66, told Wakefield Coroner's Court that Sean had a video called her after the crash. That was the last time she spoke to him. The inquest initially heard that at about 5:15 PM, 3 national police officers knocked on Sean's hotel door and that he grabbed 2 pistols and he was killed in a shootout. He was hit by 18 bullets in the legs, arms and body, which caused 39 wounds. There were no reports of any injuries to the police officers. But after Sean's brother Mark Johnson, 41, alerted the coroner to avoid a video recording which was viewed in the inquest, it showed 8 armed police officers at the scene. His schoolteacher wife, Cherie Dooley, 34, who is mother to Sean's 2 children, aged 9 and 6, said, "To do that to someone is just evil, absolutely evil. He was murdered, ruthlessly murdered." Sean had gone to Spain to open a barbershop 10 months before his death, and that she and the children had planned to follow him. "We had a good relationship. Sean was a loving husband and a good dad," she told the inquest. The inquest where his mother was left alone at Malaga airport with no help from British Embassy of Spanish authorities when she flew out to identify her son's body, which was eventually presented to her with his eyes wide open. And, despite a post-mortem in Spain, his body was eventually sent back with bullets still lodged inside him. He was sent home with bullets still in his body and without any death certificate, so we had to cancel his funeral, said his wife. Detective Constable Simon Rywood of West Yorkshire Police said Sean had several jail terms in the UK for firearm offences in the past, and had failed to attend a sentencing for possession of an offensive weapon in January of 2018. But he added that Sean was not a high priority and there was no European arrest warrant out for him. Pathologist Dr. Matthew Lyall carried out a second post-mortem in Britain, but he said he was hampered because he was given no briefing about what had occurred and there were no notes or photographs from the first autopsy. He said the number of gun wounds was the most I have personally seen in one person, and said that because so many firearms were discharged in such a confined area, Sean would have been drenched in gunshot residue. He said he would be cautious about the claim that Sean had a gun at the time he was killed. He found Sean died from multiple gunshot wounds. There is no evidence that a police officer was shot, said the coroner. Recording an open verdict, Mr. McLowan said Sean was riddled with bullets, and due to the lack of cooperation from the Spanish police, he was unable to determine whether the death was lawful or unlawful. "It is an understatement to say that I am disappointed by the actions of the Spanish authorities," he said. The coroner continued, "I have also written to the British Embassy and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office for help, but had been given nothing back. There has been radio silence from the Spanish police," he said. "The Spanish authorities have not disclosed their findings. The exact sequence of events immediately prior to his death are not known." He went on and said it was unclear why 8 police officers attended to make an arrest, whether Sean was given the opportunity to surrender, whether Sean had a gun and had shot at the police officers, and why it was deemed appropriate to fire 18 bullets into his body. Outside the court, his brother Mark said, "This was an execution. It was a murder and the Spanish police have covered it up." A coroner told a court he is unable to say if a convicted robber from Leeds was in possession of a gun just before he was shot dead by Spanish police 18 times. Sean Hercules, 39, was reported to have fired at officers before being gunned down during a shootout at a hotel in Costa del Sol resort town of East Ponia in September 2018. But at an inquest held at Wakefield Coroner's Court heard how the coroner could not conclude on the balance of probability whether or not he had held a firearm at all. The court heard how Mr. Hercules was involved in a 100 mph car crash on the morning of his death on September the 10th, 2018. He fled the scene and left to a nearby hotel just a few miles from his residence. Officers were reportedly looking for him as they claimed to have found a firearm left in the vehicle. At around 5 p.m, 6 armed officers, including 3 plainclothes officers, were reported to have fired 18 times at Mr. Hercules through his hotel door. The court heard how Mr. Hercules from Leeds died from gunshot wounds and was left riddled with bullets. He had a total of 39 firearm wounds, including 1 shot through his heart, according to a Spanish post-mortem report. Spanish National Police also said Mr. Hercules had a history of drug trafficking and weapons possession. Spanish National Police also said Mr. Hercules had a history of drug trafficking and weapons possession. However, Senior Coroner Kevin McLowan told the court he was frustrated by the conspicuous lack of cooperation from the Spanish authorities in establishing the events which led to Mr. Hercules' death. The court was told the pathologist in Britain who had conducted a post-mortem was not given a report, had no access to notes, and didn't have any assistance from the Spanish counterparts. With the lack of evidence, Mr. McLowan said he was unable to determine whether or not the Spanish police had killed Mr. Hercules legally or illegally. Sean Hercules' body was riddled with bullets. Recording an open conclusion, Mr. McLowan told the court, "To say that I am unsatisfied would be an understatement. Despite strenuous efforts to contact the Spanish authorities, they have just not cooperated. We eventually were sent the translated Spanish toxicology report, but the information we were given, I am able to make only limited factual findings. It is clear Mr. Hercules was shot 18 times and died at the scene. It is not clear, even on the standards of balance of probability, if he was even in possession of a gun, or more importantly, if he sought to shoot the police himself. No account has been given at all from the Spanish police if he was given an opportunity to surrender before he was shot. All I can say, this man's body was riddled with bullets. It is an understatement to say I am disappointed by the actions of the Spanish authorities." Mr. Hercules' wife, Cherie Ann Dooley, 34, his mother, Marcia Friel, 66, his stepbrother Mark Johnson, 41, and his cousin Nick Smith, 35, were all present at the hearing. Mrs. Dooley, who married Mr. Hercules in 2013 after he was released from prison following a 6-year sentence for shooting a man outside a nightclub with a sawn-off shotgun, told the court her husband had been brutally murdered. She said she's had to tell her 2 young children, aged 9 and 6, their father had died from an illness. In a statement read out in court, she said, "To do that to someone is just evil. Absolutely evil. He's a human being. He matters to us. He doesn't matter to anyone else, but he matters to us. We have 2 children who have to go through counselling. When he got his body, he was full of bullet holes and he didn't have a death certificate." Marcia Friel told the court she felt ashamed to be British following the investigation into her son's death. She told the court, "I was ashamed to be British. I got no help from the government. I cannot understand why the police in Spain shot Sean so many times. It was so excessive." Dr. Matthew Lyall, a forensic pathologist who performed the post-mortem when Mr. Hercules' body was eventually returned to the UK, said he could not confirm whether gunshot residue was found on his body indicated he held a firearm. The coroner also stated he was not made aware if any firearm belongings to Mr. Hercules was ever retrieved during the investigation. A Spanish toxicology report, which translated said, Mr. Hercules had traces of MDMA, diazepam, paracetamol, and cocaine in his blood. It went on further to say the concentration of cocaine in the blood is a level they have identified as levels common seen in fatal cocaine intoxication cases. But Dr. Lyall said he was unable to confirm whether or not he had taken those drugs on that day of the shooting. The Spanish coroner determined that Mr. Hercules' death was violence, hypervolemic shock, and firearm injuries. Dr. Lyall's findings concluded he had died from gunshot wounds from a rifled firearm. He added the number of gunshots was not common and the most he'd seen in a single case. Speaking following the hearing, Mr. Hercules' stepbrother, Mark Johnson, branded the entire investigation a cover-up and added it was the biggest hush case he'd ever seen. He said this had been a Spanish cover-up. It has affected the grieving process, even 2 years on. I feel for his wife, his mother, his children who are still going through the pain. This is the biggest hush case I've ever seen. He added, we washed his body. As Muslim, you have to be washed by a loved one before you can depart, and I took that on. I could feel every single bullet shot that went through him. It was the most difficult thing I've ever done. So what are your thoughts about Sean Hercules' murder? And could you believe that the Spanish authorities would go to such lengths to cover up what happened to Sean on that fateful day? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for joining us, and until next time.